Hi everyone, I'm Zel. I'm a 14-year-old student from Adelaide, and I'm here to tell you about our Students Declare workshop that happened yesterday over at the Capitol Theatre. It was really great. We had a packed house. We had about 70 students come and show up from, I think, 4 different schools in the Melbourne area, and students from Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria, so that was absolutely
2014 will go down as the warmest year around the globe in recorded history.
2015 was the hottest year since climate records began.
Your show this July was the single hottest month in recorded history.
Australia sweltered through its hottest spring on record.
Climate change is now affecting every country on every continent.
It's the rate that's of great concern.
And what do you put that rate down to?
Oh, it's human activity.
We have everything we need. Some still doubt that we have the will to act, but I say the will to act is itself a renewable resource.
So we are at York Butter Factory at 520 Brook Street in Melbourne CBD, and we are having a bit of a roundtable discussion here today. To my left, we have Finn, and I'm going to say it terribly wrong. I've been typing it for months to you and like seeing your name, but here you are in person. I've just met you, in flesh the first time today. And how do you say your name the right way?
No, you do it right. Like it's just Finn, easy.
But it's like the fin of a surfboard.
Precisely.
Okay, that is easier because there's an E in there and it gets confusing. But yeah. I'm just
in my language they use the E to lengthen a sound, but it's still like one sound.
Finn.
Making things complicated, but it's easy.
Good. Okay. And to Finn's left, we have Marco. And how are you doing today, Marco?
Yeah, I'm doing well. A bit hot and sweaty after riding around the place in this hot weather, but yeah.
What are you riding?
Just a bike. Getting ready for going down to Tassie to do a half marathon, but hoping to ride down there.
That's right. When's the big day? When does the race start?
The race starts on March 13th.
And it'll go for a week?
No, it's...
I'd need a week to do that kind of distance.
It's a half marathon, so 22 Ks, but yeah.
So just half a week?
Yeah, just half a week.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And so you're preparing for this by riding a bike around, or also is your will in order? Like, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling like I need to do more training. I feel like I haven't been doing it consistently enough, but I feel like I could just smash it out. But yeah, I definitely should do a bit more consistent training for it. But yeah, I'm doing the 22K, not the 65K, so significantly less distance there.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you all the best for that, and I'm glad you're doing it, not me. But at the end of this, we'll ask you for some links about how we can support you and a bit more about that marathon. But to bring Zel into this, Zel, are you running any marathons in the near future?
I'm not. Marco's doing really fantastic with that side of things, and I'll leave that to him.
You feel like that's already done. He's already repping it well, and you don't have to. Yeah.
He can handle that.
Very good.
Zel has been doing a pretty good job on the marathon for climate emergency declarations over the past year. They've been leading in that front, so.
Very well put there, Marco, that Zel has been kind of very much out front in the climate community over the last... It's over a year now.
Yeah, last time I saw you in Melbourne, which was March 2019, I'd only just started. I'd only just been doing it for about a month and a half, so I was really new to it then.
Even then, you were so confident and driven. And so what's the last year been like in hindsight?
The last year's been like a real mix of things. So we've been focusing a lot on councils. So we've had really fantastic progress with regional councils, local councils, and even quite a few capital cities over the last year. So lots in Australia. We even had the whole state.
Sydney was massive. Melbourne, I understand you've been in the trenches though with Adelaide.
Yep, and Adelaide was a bit harder. We had to push twice, but that finally got through, and we eventually got the Australian Capital Territory to declare a climate emergency. So hopefully that's the start to having even bigger governments getting CEDs declared.
Very good. And so why was it that particular kind of part of the community that drew you in? What was attractive about the Climate Emergency Declaration?
So, working with city local councils, so like I said, I came late to the game of climate emergencies. So Marco and people with CASE were working on Darebin for quite a while before I joined. So the local councils was the target when I started working on climate emergencies. So that's kind of what I just fell right into. So then from there I've just been working up with lots of other people.
Fantastic. So how does that kind of compare and contrast with your experience there, Marco, with being involved with CASE, and sort of how's the last year been for you?
Yeah, I haven't actually been involved too much with CASE and getting Darebin to declare that climate emergency. In fact, I didn't really even know about the climate emergency declaration movement in 2018 until I got much more involved in the school strike for climate, and then I was trying to push a similar thing through school strike. So last year has predominantly been as a Year 12 student in school strike for climate, and within the Darebin Council progressing beyond the climate emergency declaration
into this kind of like mobilization phase, and what is that? What do those words actually kind of mean, and sort of seeing actual tangible steps being taken by council in the last year? Yeah, so because obviously there's been a lot of councils declaring, but the actions from them, whilst there has been a lot, are still not what is required. Some pushing,
definitely.
Some cajoling.
Yeah.
So it would be fair to say that like involvement with School Strike for Climate was kind of a catalyst for you both, and then like the road's really gone on from there on to, bigger and diverse things. Like both of you haven't really sort of stayed just in the lane of we strike every 3 months or so. Like there's been a lot more involved with your involvement in the community.
Yeah, I'd say that School Strike for Climate is what pushed me into just like motivated to gain more awareness about the climate crisis. But I wouldn't say that it's what pushed me into climate and getting on board with climate emergency declarations. I wouldn't be involved in climate anything to do with climate action if it wasn't for School Strike for Climate. But CEDs really came a while after all that happened. But it kind of paved the road to getting here. So
that'd be the same for you, Marco?
Kind of, but kind of not, because I was already involved in climate action and groups, and was doing a lot of campaigning before the school strikes started. I was working with Galilee Blockade a lot, and then they kind of merged into XR, Extinction Rebellion, so then I kind of moved into that as well, and then School Strike for Climate came up, and I jumped on that, and it was kind of the same time when I heard about what Darebin had started, and with actually, it was probably from XR, really, that I heard about the climate emergency declarations being, like, tell the truth as the first demand about the climate emergency, declaring the climate emergency. So that was probably, the entry point for me.
It's really interesting now that it has been, over a year for you both that you've been really actively involved, to look back on what it was that did get you involved for the first big action, first sort of moment where you feel like, this is a community I can be part of. I understand that, here we are on Monday, and just over the weekend you were part of a big kind of on-ramp, onboarding event as well for the school-age community. Can you tell us a bit about this workshop you were part of at the Climate Emergency Forum and what the hope with it is? Yeah, so on Friday at the National Climate Emergency Summit, Marco, Jean Hinchliffe, Kaity Thompson and myself, we had the opportunity to run a workshop for students and teachers to try and give them the information and resources
and kind of teach them about how what a climate emergency is and why they should try and push to get one declared at their schools. So I think we had about 4 schools from the Melbourne area and quite a few people from interstate as well. So we kind of ran through a series of workshops. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the workshop itself was comprised of like a few different activities. We wanted to keep it engaging and interesting for the students. So we had breakout sessions which allowed us to talk about what kind of barriers could be faced, how we could overcome those, how we can use our allies and strengthen those, and all of these kind of questions which are essential for planning a really solid roadmap to get a climate emergency declared at the school. And I guess we were pushed to create this workshop because as of yet, there's no school in Australia that has declared a climate emergency that we know of at least. But around the world there's the first declarations were made last October, I think.
Yep. In Italy, and now we've got Belgium on board, so we've got 47 schools with climate emergencies.
So that crown is just sitting there waiting for some Australian school to take it, because everyone in the country who knows about anything to do with climate change knows that Darebin was the first city council to declare a climate emergency. Yeah. And I want to send my kid to the first school that declares a climate emergency and acts on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is that just money on the table? That's amazing.
Yeah, just how people say like certain things that politicians do can guarantee them more votes. Certain things that schools do can guarantee them more enrollments.
Yeah. And reputation points.
Exactly.
That sheen to it. So sort of going into it, your advice for these students was, I'm sure there's ways to introduce or to start getting the climate emergency as part of everyday school activities. But it's important to really have like a strategy worked out initially, like sort of start with a clear plan in mind.
Yeah, so what we kind of got the kids to do, the first thing that we did was get them to write down the barriers that they might encounter when trying to get a climate emergency through, but also some of the things that they could do in their school environment to get a climate emergency. Like they could put in a climate emergency. So when you get a climate emergency declaration, you really start off with a foundation, and because each environment, each council, each school, each organisation is different and unique in the way that they do things, it's important to kind of add your own way or your own actions to each climate emergency. So that's what we were kind of showing the kids, that it's a lot more than just we hand you this piece of paper, you hand it to your principal and they sign it. You really need to make it personal and make it that it'll work effectively in your school environment.
Very good.
Going to the kind of overall strategy which we were going for, we did kind of develop the workshop over declaring first the climate emergency and ecological crisis, acting on it, and then advocating for it. So throughout the workshop we moved through those different topics and then discussed the pillars of declaration of a climate emergency as well.
Sounds like a big topic, and you only had a few hours to go through this in the workshop, didn't you? So it sounds like, a podcast series, or it's and it will matter a lot which school you're in, what area, if it's a religious school, if it's not, if it's a charter school, if it's not. Just to quickly throw in, like, my experience, I was homeschooled, so I wouldn't have had much luck with the school emergency declaration. It would have been easy, or it would have been the hardest thing in the world, because my dad is still a skeptic and votes the wrong way in American elections. I won't mention that. But then I went to a boarding school in New Zealand. So I did go to a school, but it was later on in my schooling time. And that school was Anglican. It was very conservative. It was very old school. But rowing was a really big thing for it. And I think actually there could have been a really strong lever to use there with... New Zealand right now is going through drought conditions itself. There are a lot of the rowing places aren't available for rowing anymore. So there is some ways to kind of get very specific, I guess, with that message, like what matters to the school, what matters to the school community, and really hit the connection to the climate crisis home. Yeah, well, that's actually an interesting point, because during the workshop I spoke to a few students from this school, which was a sporting school. So they said it would be quite difficult for them to declare a climate emergency because their school was basically evolved around just sports. And so then I tried to point to the fact that now we're seeing sport matches cancelled because having to be cancelled because of the climate crisis. You've got Shane Warne coming out and saying we're in a climate crisis. Yeah, definitely. So I think that so different ways you can do it for different schools depending on religion, sport, or whatever the school is most focused on can definitely be beneficial. Yeah, turn it into a strength. And like safety is the most important thing as well. And I think that's what lots of teachers really understood during the workshop, is that making sure kids are safe. Like we have that in most primary schools and high schools at the moment. If it's too hot, you're not allowed to go outside, or there's like rain bells, all that kind of stuff. But how are you supposed to, like, when extreme temperatures become the norm, how are kids going to be able to go and play outside? Kids are just going to have to stay inside. I met a lady on the last day of the summit who was talking about trying to get playground awareness put into climate emergencies. So most playgrounds you'll see are made out of plastic. When the sun comes out, those really heat up, and it can burn kids. Like it can be really painful and unsafe for younger kids. And I think when mentioning that, it just makes me think of the 2000 schools which were shut down in New South Wales due to the fires. Like, these fires scientists have indicated these fires have been accelerated and intensified by the climate crisis, and yet and they're literally shutting down schools because of them. So it's such an obvious concern of safety for everyone. Maybe I'm just ahead of the curve by being homeschooled. If we can't go to school anymore. Finn, we've got someone here at the table who is Belgian, and you went to school, I'm assuming, in Belgium. Does it surprise you at all to hear that we have Belgian schools declaring climate emergencies before Australia on the front lines of the climate crisis?
It actually kind of does surprise me, but because I've been to school a long time ago, and I can see that there's a big difference happening the last years. Like, for example, I specialize myself as a research journalist in climate change, and when I started doing that like a couple of years ago, people in Belgium declared me stupid to specialize myself in that. Like, what are you going to write about? Nobody's wanted to read about it. But then the last years, when I hear about people in Belgium, I can hear how climate change is affecting them. Like, normally it's a rainy country, but they had drought, they had water shortages, which I've never thought. So then I understand that people nowadays might be thinking like, what is going on? And they've been sparked by the movement of Greta, which is like more nearby. So I think then I understand that the last years, a lot of things changed, which is good for the better.
So there you go. I mean, that's how inspiring is that it can feel in Australia like, how is it not painfully obvious that we've just been through a summer that's not an aberration, it's not a freak accident, that is the sign of a new cycle that we're in. And it can feel really disheartening how we kind of lag on acting on that. How do you kind of feel at this point in February 2020? Do you expect we'll start seeing school? Well, this is the reason why the workshop happened, right? So we start getting school emergency declarations. But are you hopeful we'll start to see them in the near future? I'm not really sure. Like, this was just one workshop, and it would be really great if like not just students but teachers could go back and advocate, not just from the student body, but like faculty and teachers everywhere. Exactly, senior leadership at schools.
that this is something that needs to be done. It's a matter of safety, it's a matter of health, and it's a matter of ensuring that kids' futures are protected. And I really hope that all the students at our workshop can go back and try and make change in their school environments, because we have the most vested interest in our futures, even more than adults or anyone else. So I really hope that we can start to see school CEDs.
You know, we've seen with the school strike such a wave of empowerment and of the knowledge of the climate crisis becoming a part of young people's identity. And we've seen that because people will give up Fridays and they'll, go out and they will strike, and they will go out at the drop of a hat, to be outside an MP's office or something. But do you think there's a hesitancy to kind of bring that back into the classroom or into the school environment? Is speaking maybe just for yourselves, has school kind of been a bit of a haven from the reality of dealing with climate in a lot of the rest of your time? Is there an aspect of I just want to go to class, I want to learn something, I want kind of a break from the existential dread of dealing with climate change? Is there a willingness to bring that into that environment as well?
I think it's essential. I personally felt pretty terrible not having it in there, feeling the absence of the climate emergency education in the curriculum last year.
But accounting is very important.
Of course, and we should be counting how many more years we're going to have to face of this horrendous events. And we have to be getting into the true nature of accounting. I think so a few years ago I guess throughout school I've always been pushing for, initially it was just let's introduce more environmentally concerned
the green
things.
Clubs and
that kind of stuff, just raising awareness. But then last year it became a lot more, just with my last year at school, I was I have to try do as much as I can to improve the current situation here, and hopefully this can be reflected across other schools. I did a lot of work in there because I thought it was kind of ridiculous that this climate crisis isn't being educated to people. People are so oblivious to it, even with the climate strikes that have brought thousands onto the streets. There's still a lot of inaction by young people, so schools can be a big part of mobilising them, or at least educating them.
Yeah, no, that very well said.
Yeah, well, I at my school, I'm able to talk to people about climate change, and I'm able to have discussions about it with my friends, and even with some of my teachers as well. I've had talks with my school environment captain, and they don't really feel the same way. It seems like that's kind of a job that's useless in my school. They don't really do anything in terms of environment. They don't go out to strikes. They won't go out to strikes and kind of report back about what it's really like to teachers.
Do you feel like there's a strange kind of perverse incentive where if you're part of the green team, or say captain of the green team, you feel like you're doing your part? Yeah, I'm being a good person, and I don't have to go out to strike now because I'm already doing enough.
And I think I'm not sure. I'm not in year 12 yet, but I think when you kind of reach that point, being a prefect or head boy or head girl or some environment captain, it's kind of like a role that's more about the respect that comes with it more than the responsibility that comes with it. And in the very beginning, I tried to get my school to declare a climate emergency, but by lots of councils, I got the same response, we're doing enough about climate change, we understand that it's a problem, we've got solar panels, we've got all this happening, but they didn't want to declare a climate emergency. So I'm able to talk to teachers, I'm able to talk to students and have discussions. Not all teachers though, I've said this, one of my geography teachers is a climate denier, and he said that to me. But my school is another one of those schools that's really based around sport.
You'd think the word denier in any context would be kind of verboten as a member of a faculty.
Well, you would have thought, even as someone whose job it is to
educate young minds.
Exactly. You would have thought that that's either something you'd keep to yourself or I try and get a bit more of an informed opinion about. But I think what people need to get out of is like the sense of emergency sparking fear. It needs to like spark mobilisation and just awareness. Like I said, my school is a really sporty school. They've got a volleyball program, but like really simple things. Instead of flying my school volleyball teams to different cities to participate in competitions, like charter buses or not charter trains, but catch the train. Like there's so many other ways to travel around that the school can do that is just as efficient. And yeah, I think there's so many solutions, and my senior leadership needs to stop taking the word emergency as inspiring fear.
Or it should inspire fear, and they should bloody well act on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it's so true with considered senior roles in school. I was actually one of the school captains at Northcote High and went into that role knowing that I had a big responsibility to obviously listen to all the cohort and the rest of the school with what they wanted, but to also ensure that students were being educated about the climate emergency and that there was proper actions and change coming from that. But there was this kind of like so I tried to really make it a central issue, not a side issue, which it is in most cases I've found. And
how did you find that? What was kind of the reaction?
It was actually really positive by the by the principal and by other staff members. They were getting on board with a lot of the projects I was putting forward. They probably also found me incredibly tiresome, constantly emailing, nagging them to
when you challenge people, that's how they feel about you, but you get closer to the end result you want. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, but ultimately it was a lot came out of it, and even though I don't like to hold authority and much more for like non-hierarchical organising, it did allow me to have a
that's the structure
influence.
Schools have, still, so you have to work within it. Just a quick hypothetical for you. We talked a little bit about Northcote High just now, your alma mater, your previous school, Marco, and we talked about your school, Zel. They got this sporting tradition, and they don't want to confront the fear of it. They don't want alarmist rhetoric, language, and stuff. Do you think which one would surprise you the least if the first climate emergency declaration comes from a super progressive, woke, green school like in Northcote High, kind of a traditional kind of place where you imagine green things to come from, but everyone kind of feels comfortable, like they're doing things, and they know the bad things happen, but they feel good because they're doing something? Or is it going to come from a place like a Nelligan or a Malakuta community completely ravaged by the Australian bushfire crisis this year? Like, we're going to get like a real like safe we don't have conservative, a safe liberal seat who has just been ravaged. Which of those do you think is more likely at this stage to be the first CED?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I think that the problem with CEDs in schools at the moment is maybe with schools that are a bit more green and a bit more environmentally focused, that they are doing enough and they are doing a really great job with stuff, and they are, but climate emergency is like the word emergency. It can really make people scared, and I think what teachers argue the most is that it'll make kids scared, especially in primary schools where younger students are. So I'm not really sure which school would declare first. I think as soon as either any school anywhere has the information that the word emergency is about mobilisation, education and awareness, that would be a likely trigger for them to declare.
Yeah, I feel similar not sure either way, but I do feel it's going to come from a more generally regarded progressive area as like Darebin or Melbourne City Council schools, because I do think at the moment it's probably not on the top of schools out in Malakuta's minds to be declaring climate emergencies. Like, obviously, when it's the perfect time to be talking about it, but with the damage and destruction that these fires have caused, I feel like it's much more likely to come from schools that haven't been directly affected, but in those progressive kind of mindsets. And
But do you think, like, the fact that those schools are destroyed and they face the emergency and the climate change so close by actually might be an opportunity to rebuild things out of the mindset that we have a climate emergency and we have to rethink our schools and school systems to be adapted and resilient to climate change? Because some of those schools are totally burned down and they'll have to rebuild it. And maybe that might just be the good moment to catch up with what you're teaching your students at your workshops and to make them more resilient for climate change.
Yeah, that's actually a really fantastic question, but I'm not sure. There's been lots of fundraisers to kind of help restructure and rebuild towns that have been destroyed by bushfires, such as Nelligan and Malakuta, but in any of these resources that are online for fundraising, I've seen no talk of rebuilding poor areas of the town so that they're more safe to fire, like more green spaces, preventing dry conditions, not just in the town but around the town. I've seen none of that actually attached to resources about raising money to rebuild the town, and I think that's kind of that's like really ignorant. Like, we've seen scientists say that these fires are not just going to continue, but they're going to get worse every year. So I think taking the money that's been donated, they should be rebuilding the town in a much safer way that protects all the residents.
For sure.
And I think that also includes schools if they have to be rebuilt.
Yeah, definitely. To start with, for sure, but because if you focus on schools like what you are doing, you're actually focusing on the most important part of society, because the way students think and are educated will reflect later on in the entire society, right? So if they get more fire resilient and climate change resilient schools, they might take all those lessons with them to whatever they build up later on in their lives.
Yeah, I think so. Also, just going back to your first question, I think it's probably, I'm not sure on the exact situation of it, but I would imagine there'd be quite a politically difficult situation for schools that are trying to desperately find funding to rebuild and fix things up. So I think due to the politics still that is attached to the climate emergency, I feel like that could be another hesitation for some schools which have been directly affected to declare climate emergencies. Yeah.
I see.
So we only have probably another sort of 5 minutes here, which is unfortunate. It's gone really fast, and thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with us for this time. Rather than asking you kind of, the big questions and sort of what you think of the future and speaking for all of schools and stuff, just as two young men, Marco and Zel, how did you find the Climate Emergency Summit, and what's kind of what's your reaction to it been like? Because I know, Marco, we spoke at, SLF 2019, and it was the 20-year anniversary, and it was great and everything, but here we are. It's another year. It's another February. It's another Sustainable Living Festival. Does it feel like things have changed?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a really great move to make either Climate Emergency Summit, to make it much more about mobilisation than the festivities, because obviously we are in dire times, and whilst it's good to party and do that, we need to have a lot more large-scale strategic mobilisation and sessions to debate theories of change within the climate emergency movement, and discuss dilemmas and challenges that we face moving forward. And I think that's what the Climate Emergency Summit helped do much more effectively than the more traditional sustainable living festivals.
I think that the summit was really enlightening and motivational. It was really great to hear so many of the speakers, not just from Australia, but from overseas, who were such great communicators. That made me think, like, this isn't the only venues they go to. Like, they're going to go out and speak to so many more people in the same eloquent but really simple way of just addressing it how it is, explaining it how it is. But also so many of the people who came up and would listen to talks but came up and spoke to me afterwards, who were agreeing and understanding that adaptation is not a path that we want to go down. Mobilisation and education is the way that we need to address this problem, and that was really fantastic.
I was really struck by what you said there, Marco, about how it is a chance to have debates within the climate community about our theories of change and about the way forward. And it's really great that we have all these groups that are getting together every weekend and they do actions and stuff. But what constantly gets asked for within the community is a sense of unity and direction, and like that there is something happening at scale. And this was just the right event to actually have that bigger discussion and hash out who's doing what and why. What is the goal? What is the roadmap? What is the plan? Is there do you have a sense, even just for yourselves, but you can speak about the whole community if you want, is there a sense of clarity for you about what to do in the next year after leaving the Climate Emergency Summit? Yeah, so I was saying on my panel on Saturday that the school strikes were the alarm bells, and these climate emergencies are our first response actions. So I really hope that that climate emergencies can be seen as the clear way to move forward and like progress to the next level of making things happen, slowing down our emissions and our current way of looking and working with things in society. And I hope it's been really clear that we need a major change, and it's not going to be scary if we act now, but it's something that really needs to be done. Very nice. And what does the year ahead look like for you, Marco? I know you're going to be running very soon through a forest, so yes. Should we all do that? Should we all just go?
Well, actually, in the scheme of the climate emergency, it's debatable, like whether we do focus on single campaigns or focus on the broader picture.
I think if we all looked at the broader picture, nothing would actually get done. Probably,
I think they're essential, all these different campaigns, but I do think it's good that
God bless the knitting nanas.
So for me, I'm actually not too certain on where I am going to devote most of my energy and time. I'm still trying to figure out and think, because I traditionally have been involved in campaigns like Galley Blockade, Stop Adani, School Strike for Climate, and like single kind of threat campaigns like stopping the Adani coal mine, stopping native forestry logging. So now I'm really thinking, how do I also go to a much larger scale thing, because ultimately there's another 200 coal mines being planned across, there's hundreds across the world, and many in Australia being planned. There's fracking, there's oil drilling, which is potentially going to be occurring pretty soon in the Bight, and
fracking begun in the NT. It really feels like you can really get worn out playing the game of whack-a-mole against individual projects, and we could keep playing that game for decades.
It's hard it is hard to see the end, I think. I do, but obviously I know we have to just keep building it larger and larger. So my answer isn't too clear. I'm going to be getting more involved with Extinction Rebellion Youth and try to mobilise on the climate emergency and under XR's demands, which I agree with. And
I think it's thank you for saying what you've just said, because I think I'm projecting a lot. I'm remembering back to when I was like 16 and I didn't have something like the school strike happening. I didn't have like some big motivating thing. But if I had, and I had gone along to a school strike, I would have felt after that like, oh my God, I need to be involved. I need to find my space. I need to find my lane. I need to get involved. Yeah. And I probably would have for about a year, and then I would have like popped my head up and been like, okay, is this the right fit for me? What else should I do? And I'm really glad that you, Marco, as someone who is really well known within the community, that you can say, I'm not sure where I'm going next, and that's okay. And it's okay to just for a second, just look around the landscape and see where am I best going to fit? Where's the best use of my skills, and where's going to fill my cup? And it's a great thing to say, because I think a lot, rightly, people are freaked out, which means you need to be doing something. You need to be doing something all the time, and it's okay, even just for a few weeks or a few months, of just like take a breath, run a half marathon in your case.
Yeah, I've made that kind of my rest time in the forest. Whilst I'll be helping out with the campaign down there, it'll be a time off the computer, hopefully. And
good. Good. So tell us a little bit about the half marathon through the Tarkan rainforest. How can we get involved and have you run on our behalf so that we don't have to?
Yeah, well, chipping into my fundraiser page. You can find it maybe in the description of
link
this
in the show notes. Yeah, easy.
Podcast. And basically the half marathon is a fundraiser for the Bob Brown Foundation's campaign to protect the Tarkania Wilderness region of northwest Tassie. It's the world's largest tract of cool temperate rainforest. It's got many sites of historical significance for the First Nations people there, and obviously the rest of Australia. The threatened species down there are astounding, and the forests are remarkable. And
Gondwana natives and species endemic to that area that you can't find anywhere else. Oh, that sounds like an amazing place to go for a run, or I'd be going for a walk. That sounds great. Yes, so listeners, please get on that and support Marco's campaign, and I guarantee for every $10 he'll run extra fast.
Yep, definitely.
Finn, do you have any final questions for these two?
Yeah, well, maybe actually one related to what you say, like that you sometimes don't know where you're going to next. Like, what's it that keeps you going? Like, because sometimes it is hard to be activist or being involved in this kind of movement and trying to change something, regardless some people don't want to change. So what's the thing that you can tell yourself or keep for yourself, saying like, this sucks, but I'll do it therefore, and it gets you up again?
What keeps me going is a mixture of things. The wonders of this world that haven't been destroyed, the people, all the good people on this world who are also fighting to protect it, is truly inspiring to be part of that. This movement, this growing movement, and I guess just the acknowledgement of the privileges I have living in Northcote, with my family, and having been able to go through 12 years of education. I acknowledge that many people across the globe aren't able to do that, aren't able to take the time I'm taking to fight for the climate crisis, and many people don't even have the ability to choose whether they are activists or not, because their life depends on it. So that's a big motivator for me. It's like, it can get tough, and it can get really disheartening when you think things aren't going as fast as they should be, or
sometimes going backwards.
Yeah, and going backwards is how it's looking in Australia, in the political sense anyway. So.
Oh no, I've just talked you out of being motivated.
I think what keeps me going is like Facebook and social media can be a really depressing place sometimes. It can also be a really amazing place, just being able to see strikes that are happening in like in Australia, but also groups that are popping up all over the place, Nigeria, Central Asia, all these amazing places that like most people my age wouldn't have even heard of, Uzbekistan, but
you've got friends there.
Yeah, and it's really fantastic to see that stuff. So on the digital world, that seeing all these strikes happening, even though they're like strikes, and it can only do so much, but it really shows the people power of places all over the world. So in the digital world, that's really really motivational. And like what Marco said, I think you're a kind of person who really enjoys being out in nature. And I think that's another thing, like just looking at the beauty of our world and what we've still got and just being grateful is a really fantastic like mindset to have. When I was in Canberra over the summer holidays, it was just so much smoke and it was horrible. And what I just did for one day is just took a break from everything and went to the aquarium. And I know it might sound weird, but just being surrounded by water and looking at fish just was really relaxing and being in the right mindset. But what really makes me think is that there's 4 million people in Australia under the age of 14. How many of those people have parents that won't let them go out and go out to strikes, go out and do activist stuff, or just have any kind of voice or participation in anything to do with climate change? You know, it's really fantastic that we're able to do this and go out and protest, go out to summits. So I really hope that if anyone out there with parents who aren't supportive or won't let them go out and share their voice, that this is something that they can go out and do eventually. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you both so much for joining us. You're really inspiring, and I've made sure to like try to ask you questions about, you know, from your perspectives as just, you know, two young people. But of course, people listening to this are probably tuning in because they are familiar with your names, familiar with the amazing work you've both done in the last year. It's really, I remember being nervous speaking to you for the first time, Marco, because I knew you as the young man who'd been on Q&A, and I'm just such a media kind of, you know, suck up. But getting to know you both as people has been really inspiring, and there's so much in my own life that I need to do better at in terms of sustainability, but in terms of like having the courage to talk to people about climate change and sort of just engage with this stuff. There's definitely days where I don't want to, but I think about you two and the example you've set, and it does give me a kick in the butt when I really need it. And so thank you. What you are doing is really being noticed by people, and I'm sure over this weekend you've had a lot of people come up to you and saying thank you and how much what you are doing means to them. But I'd just like to echo that, and thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks heaps.
And thank you, Finn, for joining me. So, Finn, here, you're going to be going to a lot of Sustainable Living Festival events over the next week. I've given you a crash course on a recorder. How are you feeling in terms of, just very quickly here, being a deputized climactic correspondent for the next week?
I think it's awesome because I would be going anyways, and I love like these kind of conversations. That's what kind of keeps me going and everything. Like, I love to talk to people who are on the same page and striving as well for it. And it's so inspiring. And I think we can inspire one another all the time. And that's how the movement keeps rolling, I think. Therefore, I'm very grateful to talk with you guys, talk with anybody, and like to attend the summit and the event, because it keeps me going as well. The moments I think like, why? Then it's like, oh no, therefore, you know, and therefore I love it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that's us. Have a good one.
Hi everyone, I'm Zel. I'm a 14-year-old student from Adelaide, and I'm here to tell you about our Students Declare workshop that happened yesterday over at the Capitol Theatre. It was really great. We had a packed house. We had about 70 students come and show up from, I think, 4 different schools in the Melbourne area, and students from Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. So that was absolutely fantastic to see people from all over the country. The structure of it went really well, went really smoothly. What we got the students to do was to get into their school groups and talk about barriers they might encounter, but also some of the great things that they could do to get a CED up and happening in their school that were unique to their school environment. That was a great success. We all got them to share what they had learned, and that was fantastic. And then the final stage of what we got the students to do was to break up into groups based on the 4 pillars of a climate emergency, which is to reduce CO2, draw down CO2, raise awareness and build resilient communities. So 4 groups, 1 for each pillar. And that was also really fantastic. We found that lots of the students were already really aware and onto climate change. There was no needing to push them. There was no needing to stand behind their backs. They all took it really independently, which was great as students running it ourselves. So I'd just like to thank everyone who came along, the National Climate Emergency Summit, and to the 3 amazing people who helped run it with me, Jean Hinchliffe, Marco Bellemo, Kaity Thompson, and Matt Wicking, who also facilitated it. So thank you, everyone.
This was a podcast from the 2020 National Climate Emergency Summit.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to Climactic, the flagship podcast of the Climactic Collective, a podcast network dedicated to lifting the voices of the climate community. You can find out more about the people behind Climactic and all the shows we produce at climactic.fm. We are a social enterprise podcast network, and we greatly appreciate your support. You can find a link to our Pozible where you can support us directly in the show notes of this episode or from our website. Thank you for listening, and from the whole Climactic Collective, keep up the great work and take care of each other in these climactic times.
The Climactic Collective.